Okay, so what do you get if you mix a Grand Seiko GMT and a Rolex Explorer 2 on a $500 budget? Well, at a glance, you get this. This is a new watch from Erebus. Erebus, of course, the brand from Jody over at Just One More Watch and his business partner Steve. They've just released a brand new GMT that on paper looks to be of insane value for money. However, I am going to be roasting this watch a little bit later in the video because although I do have a lot of respect for Jody and Steve, there is a part of this watch that deserves to be roasted. We're on the road to 100,000 subscribers. We're genuinely so close now. It's going to be within the next couple of weeks that we hit it. Do me a big favor, be part of one of the first 100,000 to subscribe to the channel. Genuinely, I'll be eternally grateful. Okay, so this is the new Erebus Ascent GMT. The original Ascent from Erebus, of course, a very popular model. Erebus's take on a Gada watch. The idea is that the watch will never look out of place. Erebus has just updated that model with a completely new movement inside. Also, they've refreshed the design a little bit to obviously make room for that GMT complication. Now, to any of you that are familiar with the Ascent, the case silhouette, the case structure is very similar to the first model, in that the watch features very dramatic chamfered edges along the sides. There is a small sweep from lug to lug, and there is lots of polishing on this watch to dress it up slightly so that it can be a go anywhere, do anything piece. Of course, this is made from completely solid stainless steel, including solid end links, solid links, and a milled clasp. This one does feature a screw down crown and case back, so it delivers 100 meters of water resistance, a very subtly domed piece of sapphire with anti-reflective treatment on the underside. This watch uses BGW9 lume, so you get a nice blue glow, and the lume experience here is very good. Erebus in this new GMT has utilized the Miyota 9075, which is a true GMT movement, meaning that you operate the hour hand independently to switch between time zones, with the idea being that that GMT hand is always set to your home time. Now, Erebus has sent over two different colors for me to check out today. One of them is this very striking blue dial. The other one is a white dial with orange accents. By the way, these watches are only on loan from Erebus. I don't get a kickback, I don't get any sort of commission. I genuinely couldn't care less if you bought this watch or not. Now, one of these models, specifically the white dial version, looks very, very similar to quite a lot of other watches that I've seen before. The Rolex Explorer 2, very similar. A Grand Seiko GMT, I don't know the reference, but very, very similar. And then the Christopher Ward Sealander GMT, again, very, very similar. Now, what that means is that this watch looks a lot more expensive than it is. Of course, because it draws a lot of inspiration from luxury watches, it sort of ends up looking a little bit like a luxury watch. But we'll revisit that thought a little bit later in the video, so stay with me. Now, not only does this watch look like it punches above its weight in terms of the design, also when it comes to quality, you know, it's really impressive here. There's lots of dramatic edges. The case flows really well in totality. The side profile is beautiful. The way the case flows into the bezel, flows into the crystal. Everything works. Everything feels very smooth. And then the transition from case to bracelet is seamless. The end links fit in there so perfectly. Very dramatic taper to the bracelet from 20 down to 16. And then a very petite clasp. You know, this does feature an on-the-fly adjustment system inside. And usually an on-the-fly adjustment system makes a clasp massive. This one is very petite. It actually feels the same size as a regular clasp. But just look at the quality of the finishing on this. Up close with the macro shots, the bracelet is just immaculate. The polishing to the case, the lug areas, again, immaculate. The circular brush on the bezel, again, there's no flaws anywhere. Even the clasp is perfectly finished. You know, it's hard to believe that this watch costs as much as it does. I don't know who is making these watches, but they clearly know what they're doing. And again, I'll give Erebus credit here. I think they've nailed the dimensions of this one. Case diameter comes in at 40mm. Lug to lug is 46mm. Case thickness is 12.5mm. Now, weirdly, I actually think this watch wears a bit smaller than that 40mm case might suggest. I think it wears more like a 39, maybe even a 38. I do think that's because the dial is a little bit smaller on this watch because you've got that brushed bezel. It doesn't have as much wrist presence and it's a fairly compact lug to lug. But don't get me wrong, this watch wears very comfortably on the wrist. Now, just like the case, I think the finish of the dial has been executed flawlessly. Again, under the macro lens, it's hard to see a single fault with this one. So the new Erebus GMT uses enamel dials. We then have multifaceted applied indexes around the dial, a very large multifaceted handset, applied logo, 6 o'clock date window that's been framed. It's a very well designed dial in terms of the symmetry, in terms of where everything's placed, and legibility is fantastic, not only because of the good crystal, because of the large handset, the large indexes, and then that large orange GMT hand. You're never going to have a hard time reading this watch. Now, one thing that's been on my mind about this watch since I unboxed it is I don't quite think this is a Gada anymore. You see, the regular Ascent, I do think it's a true go anywhere, do anything watch. I think it's got enough dressy elements on it to where you could wear it with a suit and tie, but it's also got enough sportiness to it that you could wear it on a beach or, you know, out playing sports. This one, however, I don't think it's got those dressy elements. And I think that really comes down to the bezel on this watch. Because it features a brushed bezel with black engravings, for me, this watch feels way sportier than the last Ascent. I don't think this one goes with smart attire. Simply put, that bezel dresses the watch down dramatically. Okay, so then we come on to the flaws and a little bit of a roast. Yeah, I'm not really a fan of these two colour combinations. The turquoise and pink, to be honest with you, is just atrocious. For me, it cheapens what otherwise looks like a really well put together watch. And then the white and orange, well, I feel like I've seen this watch 50 times already. It's the cookie cutter colour combination for a sporty GMT. I buy micro brands for individuality and striking designs, and I feel like these two colourways don't deliver that. One looks like a Rolex or Grand Seiko with Christopher Ward. The other is part of that god-awful Tiffany blue bandwagon trend that I'm just so over. Another flaw for me is the negative end links. I really enjoyed the positive ones from the previous Ascent. I feel like you lose some of the structure of the watch when the end links sit within the case. It doesn't hold the head of the watch quite the same. And I learned a new phrase recently, and it perfectly fits the Ascent range. It suffers from something called analysis paralysis. There's just way too many options now when it comes to the Ascent. Endless dial options, endless sizes, and now a completely new size, a new movement, and new colours to add to the pile. It's just too many. For a customer, it's near impossible to pick the one that you actually want because there's just so goddamn many to choose from. Okay, so let's talk about price. For the USA, this watch will cost you $629, which includes all of your taxes, tariffs, shipping costs, that sort of stuff. For UK customers, it's £369, which does not include taxes or shipping. For the rest of the world, the watch will cost you $499 without taxes and shipping. This is a pre-order, so Erebus asks for 50% now and 50% when the watch is ready to ship. And the all-in price for UK customers after that nasty import bill you get through the door is less than £500. Okay, so my conclusion of the new Erebus Ascent GMT. Listen, you can't fault these watches when it comes to quality. You know, you can't. It's near impossible. The fit and feel, the quality of the finishing, the quality of the dial finish is just, you know, so impressive. But for me, these two versions that I've been sent are just a little bit unimaginative. One feels like a cookie cutter to a Rolex and a Grand Seiko and a Christopher Ward. The other is one of the worst combinations I've ever seen on a watch. Now, it's worth bearing in mind there are 6 other versions of the new GMT. If Erebus would have sent me 2 different colours, who knows, this review might have been completely different. For example, I really like the look of the purple one. However, I can only review what's in front of me, and for me, I'm just not a big fan of the colour combinations on these watches. Again, can't fault quality, it's exceptional, and you certainly can't fault the price point. Under £500 for these watches is ridiculously competitive. I struggle to think of another brand that is offering this quality for under that price. Does this watch look a little bit too similar to the aforementioned watches, or do you really vibe with the design of this one? If you vibe with it, go and check out all the other colours that they do. Again, you won't be disappointed when it comes to the quality. Definitely not. You'll of course find the link for the new Erebus Ascent GMT in the description below. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. I appreciate you. Catch you soon. Bye for now.